I greet you all and welcome you to the lesson. The subject is quality control policies and procedures implemented by audit firms. So by the end of the lesson, you should be able to explain some of the quality control policies and procedures that are implemented by audit firms. And audit firms, by now you are aware, are required by professional standards to establish and maintain a system of quality controls to ensure that all audits and other assurance engagements are performed in accordance with professional standards, and that reports issued by firms are appropriate in the circumstances. So the primary international standard governing is the International Standard on Quality Control that is issued by International Auditing and Assurance Standards Board. So quality control policies and procedures are developed by audit firms based on international standards on auditing, international standard on quality control that is issued by IASB, which was replaced by the new international standards on quality management. Understand? So it's important to note as we begin that the core principles remain the same. That is the principles behind the ISQC and the ISQM. The principles remain the same. And in this lesson, we are going to identify some of the quality control policies and procedures that could be implemented by audit firms in order to ensure that these firms conduct audits and other assurance engagements in line with the professional standards. So the first point is what we call leadership responsibilities for quality within the firm. Leadership responsibilities for quality. Now, candidates, it all begins with the management. It all begins with leadership. And this is one of the first elements on quality control policies that emphasize the importance of a firm's leadership in promoting a culture of quality, a culture that recognizes that quality is essential in performing engagements. So what are some of the policies in relation to leadership responsibilities for quality? One is having a culture of quality. Culture of quality. One is culture of quality. The management should encourage a culture of quality, and it's not just encouraging but demonstrating through example. And the management can also establish a firm-wide culture that prioritizes audit quality over commercial considerations. And this includes clear messaging from the top. So that is a policy. That ought to be a policy where, or guideline where, the management puts in place measures to ensure that there is proper messaging from the top in relation to maintaining a culture of quality. So that's the first policy. You understand? The second policy here is in relation to accountability. Number two, accountability. That means assigning ultimate responsibility for the firm's system of quality control to the firm's chief executive officer or managing partner or a designated management committee. There ought to be that guideline. There has to be specific individuals who are assigned with this responsibility. 3, we have resources. Resources. This means ensuring sufficient resources, and this could be human resources, financial resources, or technological resources that ought to be allocated for the development, documentation, and support of quality control policies and procedures. So these are 3 policies. Then what are the procedures in relation to leadership responsibility for quality? So let's discuss procedures. What are the procedures? So these are policy. Policy is a broad framework or guidelines, but procedures, these are now the step-by-step, what should be done on a regular basis. So the first procedure is to have regular communication from leadership. 1, regular communication from leadership, emphasizing the importance of quality. So that is a procedure. The management, the top leadership should continuously be communicating the importance of quality in the audit firm. Regular communication from leadership. Regular. 2, performance evaluation. What do I mean by performance evaluation? This is evaluating and also rewarding, having evaluation systems and rewarding systems that recognize and improve the morale of the employees, okay? That incentivizes the quality work and also adherence to control policies. Where employees are adhering to policies after evaluation, such employees should be rewarded. That's what we mean by performance evaluation and reward systems. And reward system. That's the second procedure. You understand? Yes. So, quality control policies, we've discussed leadership and leadership responsibilities for quality. So it begins at the top. Then number 2, we can move on to the next point, which is relevant ethical requirements. Relevant ethical requirements. Relevant ethical requirements. Now this element ensures that the firm and its personnel comply with relevant ethical requirements, particularly the requirement on independence. So what are the policies in relation to ethical requirements? What policies should the audit firm put in place or develop? Now the first policy here is integrity, objectivity, and also professional competence and due care. Okay, these are policies. 1, integrity. Integrity is a very important ethical issue. Objectivity. Professional competence. So we have integrity, objectivity, professional competence, and due care. We have confidentiality and professional behavior. Confidentiality and professional behavior. So here, candidates, there ought to be what we call firm-wide commitment to these fundamental principles of ethics. Fundamental principles of professional ethics. So, integrity, objectivity, professional competence, confidentiality, and professional behavior. Then number 2, The second policy is on independence. Independence means having strict policies regarding the independence of the firm and its personnel from audit clients. And this covers financial interests, this covers family relationships, employment relationships, and the provision of non-assurance services. The audit team members should not be related in any way with the company that they are auditing. The audit firm should put in place measures to ensure that those who are auditing companies are free. They are independent. So there ought to be strict policies regarding the independence of the firm and its personnel from the audit client. So there ought to be areas like financial interests. The auditors and audit personnel should not have financial interest in the companies that they are auditing. They should not have blood relationships and so on. That is to ensure independence. You understand? Yes. Number 3, we have conflict of interest. Conflict of interest. There are also be policies in relation to conflict of interest. These are policies for identifying and managing actual or perceived conflicts of interest. So policies should be developed in relation to ethical requirements. These policies should center around integrity, objectivity, professional competence, confidentiality, professional behavior, independence, and conflict of interest. Let's move to the procedures. What procedures should an audit firm develop? Number 1 is annual independence confirmation. There ought to be procedures on annual independence confirmations. 1. Annual independence confirmations. Annual independence confirmations. Annual independence confirmation. That means obtaining written confirmation of compliance with independence policies from all the personnel of the firm, required to be independent. So the members, the staff of the audit firm should sign a document we are calling annual independence confirmation. Annual independence confirmation, which is a written confirmation of compliance with independence policies, which you have discussed here. So that's the first procedure. Apart from just having a guideline, which is just on paper, then there ought to be steps that are taken to ensure that these policies are adhered to. So one way is to have annual independence confirmations from the members of the audit team. Then we may have also what we call client acceptance procedures. Client or engagement acceptance procedures. Number 2, client acceptance procedures. Client or engagement acceptance procedures. The audit firm should incorporate independence checks into the acceptance and continuance process. That's the second procedure. The third procedure is having what we call independence monitoring system. Independence monitoring system. What do we mean by independence monitoring system? This means maintaining a system to track client relationships and non-audit services to monitor potential independence threats. Then number 4, we have safeguards. Establishing procedures for identifying threats to independence and also applying appropriate safeguards or withdrawing from engagement if threats cannot be eliminated or reduced to an acceptable level. We can also mention here training. This means having regular training on ethical requirements, including independence rules. So that is the second element of candidates of quality control policies and procedures, which is relevant ethical requirements. We are moving to the third element, which is acceptance and continuance of client relationships. Acceptance and continuance. Number 3. Acceptance and continuance of client relationship. Acceptance and continuance of client relationships or specific engagements. Now, this element focuses on ensuring that the firm only undertakes or continues client relationships and engagements where it is competent. Alright, and where it can also comply with ethical requirements and where the client has integrity. So currently we are discussing quality control policies and procedures that are implemented by audit firms. One element in quality control procedures and policies is acceptance on continuance of clients. So there ought to be policies in relation to acceptance and continuance of clients. So what are the policies? First of all, we have defined what we mean by continuance and clients and our clients relationship. If you are auditing a firm, it's important to sometimes ensure that the audit firm undertakes or continues with client relationships where it is competent. If you are auditing company A in year 1 competently, but in year 2 you feel that you may not be competent to audit company A, then you need to consider your discontinuing of auditing such a company. So there has to be policies in place. So what are these policies? Now, the first policy is in relation to integrity, client integrity. Because candidates, the audit firm should only continue offering services to clients who have integrity. There ought to be policies for assessing the integrity of their client and their management, such that if the integrity goes down, then the company should consider not offering services to such a company. So there has to be policies in relation to client integrity. 2, the resources, competence and resources. There has to be policies. There have to be policies to ensure the firm, the audit firm, has the necessary capabilities, competence, or also time and resources to perform the engagement. That has to be in place. There ought to be policies in relation to ensuring that the company has resources. 3, compliance. There are also policies in relation to compliance. This is commitment to comply with relevant ethical requirements and also professional standards. These are policies. Then procedures in relation to acceptance and continuance of client relationship. One procedure could be having client acceptance checklist. Okay. 1, client acceptance / continuance checklist. What does that mean? This means having detailed checklists to evaluate potential and existing clients, including inquiries with third parties or even previous auditors and legal counsel. Background checks. Number 2, conducting background check. There ought to be procedures to conduct background checks on clients so that the audit firm can make a decision on whether to continue offering services or not. Background checks. That means performing background checks on key client management and those charged with governance where appropriate. 3, management approval. Management approval. Now, this means requiring approval from a partner or a client acceptance committee for all new and significant existing client relationships. Then another point is on 4, documentation. Another procedure, documentation. Documentation means documenting the significant issues considered and the conclusions reached regarding client acceptance or continuance. So that's point number 3. Now point number 4, the 4th element is on human resources. There ought to be policies and procedures on human resources. Now, this element ensures that the audit firm has sufficient personnel with the capabilities, competence, and also commitment to ethical principles necessary to perform engagements in accordance with professional standards. So there are various policies in relation to the human capital. So what are these policies? Now, the first policy on human capital is recruitment. Policy number 1, recruitment. We are talking about human resource. 1, recruitment means having policies for recruiting individuals with integrity and the capacity to develop necessary capabilities and competence. So the audit firm should ensure when engaging staff, the staff ought to be committed to ethical principles. The staff should be people with integrity, professional competence, and professional behavior, and so on. Recruitment is one of the policies very important in relation to human resources. Performance evaluation number 2. Performance evaluation. The work of the audit staff should be evaluated on a regular basis. So there ought to be performance evaluation, promotion, and also compensation policies that emphasize and reward quality. Professional development, number 3. Professional development. Professional development. There has to be policies to ensure that staff are professionally developed. There ought to be commitment to ongoing professional education and development for all personnel. Assignment, number 4. Number 4 is assignment. Now, when it comes to assigning duties, there ought to be policies on assignment of engagement team. Assignment of engagement team members. How the team members are assigned is also very critical. So recruitment is not just enough, performance is not enough, professional development is not enough. It's important that there are policies in place to assign personnel with the appropriate competence and capabilities to engagement team. So these are policies. Can we now discuss procedures? These are just guidelines. Can we discuss procedures? These are policies, but what are the procedures? The step by step, the regular, what has to be done regularly. The first procedure is in relation to recruitment processes. 1, recruitment processes. Recruitment processes. What do you mean by recruitment processes? Now, the company or the audit firm should have structured interview processes, background checks, and also verification of qualifications. Because remember, recruitment, there are policies we discuss here under human capital. The first policy is in relation to recruitment. So what to do here is what should be done under procedures is to ensure that there are structured interview processes. The audit firm should also conduct background checks and verify qualifications of the personnel. Number 2, training programs. Training programs. Training programs. The audit firm should have mandatory continuing professional development programs including internal training sessions and also access to external courses. Number 3, monitoring, coaching. Monitoring and coaching is also a procedure under human capital. The audit firm should have programs to support the development of junior staff. Okay, then lastly we have staffing decisions. Number 4, staffing decisions. Staffing decisions. Number 4, staffing decisions. So each procedure here is corresponds to the policy. So the first policy, the recruitment, the procedures, the policies on recruitment are made or implemented by the following procedures: the recruitment processes. Then there is also training programs, monitoring and coaching, and also staffing decisions. The audit firm should document processes for assigning staff to engagements based on the experience, expertise, and also complexity of the engagement. When that happens, then candidates' quality can be assured. So that is all for the 4th element, human resources. The 5th element is engagement performance. There has to be policies in relation to engagement performance. This is number 5. Engagement. Now, what do we mean by engagement performance? Now, this is an element under quality control policy that deals with the policies and procedures designed to ensure that engagements are performed appropriately and that reports issued are appropriate in the circumstances. So what are the policies? Policies or broad guidelines. The first policy, when it comes to the engagement performance, is consistent engagement process. There ought to be consistent engagement process. Consistent engagement process. The key word here is consistency. Policies for there ought to be policies for consistent planning, consistent performance. There ought to be supervision to be consistent, and also review of engagements. Number 2, consultation. Now, the audit firm should also have policies requiring timely consultation on complex, unusual, or even contentious matters. 3, differences of opinion. Differences of opinion. The firm should have in place policies for resolving differences of opinion among the engagement team or with the consultants. So there has to be policies. How do you deal with opinions that are different? How do you resolve differences of opinion within the engagement team? So the audit firm must have guidelines on how to go about differences of opinion. Then we have what we call engagement quality control. Engagement, number 4, engagement quality control review. Engagement quality control review. There has to be policies requiring engagement quality control review for certain engagements. For example, engagements for listed entities or high-risk engagements. There has 5, documentation is a policy. There are also policies for comprehensive and adequate audit documentation. So these are policies in relation to engagement performance, how the audit work is performed or carried out. Procedures in relation to engagement. Procedures. The first procedure is having standardized audit methodologies. Standardized audit methodologies. 1. Standardized audit methodologies, and this corresponds with consistent engagement process. For you to have consistent engagement process as a policy, then you need a procedure which is having standardized audit methodology. You understand? So these procedures, candidates, just corresponds with the policies. And if you're keen enough, you will discover that's what I've been doing all through. I've listed the policies, then the procedures, how the policies are now implemented, because policies are just broad guidelines. These guidelines are made practical by having specific procedures, step by step. Now, standardized audit procedures means use of standard audit methodologies, programs, or even working paper templates that can enhance consistency. Then there is also supervision. Okay? Supervision. Number 2. Supervision. What does that mean? Now, supervision as a procedure means having clear lines of authority and responsibility for supervision within the engagement teams. Review process refers to having multi-level review of audit work by a more experienced personnel. For example, the senior manager, the partner, senior partner, and so on. Then there is the EQCR process. EQCR process is yet another procedure. This is number 4. EQCR process is also very critical. This is the formal process for an independent partner or suitably qualified individual to review significant judgments and conclusions before the audit report is issued. You understand? Yes. Now let's move on to the 6th element, which is monitoring. This is element number 5. Element number 6, monitoring. Monitoring is another element. Monitoring, right? We are moving on well with the quality control policies and procedures. We are first of all identifying the element, then we discuss the policies and procedures. Now, monitoring involves ongoing consideration and evaluation of the firm's system of quality control, including periodic inspection of selection of completed engagements. It also includes obtaining reasonable assurance that the system is operating effectively. So monitoring again also has policies. Okay. So what are the policies? The first policy is continuous development. Continuous development or improvement. The right word would be improvement, because we are talking about monitoring. The idea behind monitoring, the reason why we monitor any activity is for the sake of improvement. So let me have it as continuous improvement. There are policies on there ought to be policies on continuous improvement. This is commitment to continuously assessing and improving the quality control systems. Number 2, internal inspections. Internal inspections. There has to be policies on internal inspections. These are policies for conducting periodic internal inspections of completed engagements. 3, complaints. There has to be policies in relation to complaints, because complaints can help the company improve its quality of work. Complaints and allegations. There ought to be policies for handling complaints and allegations regarding non-compliance with professional standards or even the firm's quality control systems. So these are 3 policies. Procedures. Procedures would include, under monitoring would include post-issuance reviews, or what we call cold reviews. Cold reviews. These are reviews after the engagement, after the audit report has been issued. There has to be a procedure where the work done is reviewed. These are regular procedures, regular reviews of completed engagement files by qualified personnel not involved in the original audit. And these are usually done after the audit report has been issued. Root cause analysis, number 2. Root cause analysis. Remember, candidates, here we are talking about monitoring. So in the process of monitoring, is possible to come across deficiencies in the quality control system. When deficiencies are identified, then it's critical to have procedures to go to the root cause of the deficiencies. That means investigating the root causes of identified deficiencies in the audit control and then implementing corrective actions. That is procedure number 2. Procedure number 3 is on reporting. Reporting is also a very important procedure. Regularly reporting findings from monitoring activities to the firm's leadership. So this information that is gathered after monitoring has to be escalated to the top leadership. Then another procedure is follow-up. Follow-up procedures. Following up after identifying deficiencies, after identifying the root causes and mechanisms are put in place to remediate these deficiencies, then there has to be follow-up. There has to be procedures to ensure that corrective actions are implemented effectively. 5, peer review. Peer review is also a procedure in quality control under the element monitoring. Peer review. That means participating in external peer reviews or inspections mandated by professional bodies or regulators. So that is all, candidates, for today's lesson on quality control policies and procedures implemented by the audit firm. I've, in this lesson, categorized these quality control policies and procedures. First of all, we identified the elements. There are 6 elements. The first element is leadership responsibilities for quality. The second one is relevant ethical requirements. The third one is acceptance and continuance of client relationships. The fourth one is human resources. Then the 5th element is engagement performance. Then lastly, we have monitoring. Each and every element, we've discussed the policies and corresponding procedures. So we have policies and procedures for each and every element. So take time, candidates, to go through the lesson once again, understand the concept. Then you should be able to explain the different qualities, quality policies and quality procedures. Because at the beginning we did note that audit firms are required by professional standards to establish and maintain system of quality control to ensure that all audits and other assurance engagements are performed in accordance with the professional standards, and that the reports that these firms issue are appropriate in the circumstances. So in this lesson, we have identified the procedures and the policies. And in closing, I need to remind you that these comprehensive quality control policies and procedures should be implemented by audit firms. And the aim is to minimize audit risks, to enhance public confidence in their reports, and also ensure consistent high-level audit services. Consistent high-level audit services. Candidates, when providing, whether it's goods or services, quality is a very important factor. So auditing is no exception. That's why auditors are required to adhere to international standards on quality control that are issued by the International Auditing and Assurance Standards Board. So that's the end of our today's lesson. We meet in our next session where we continue to share knowledge in auditing and assurance. Bye-bye.